As rate cut bets shift, so have moves in one sector in particular. Shares of AMD and Intel both down over 15% in the last 30 days. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index, also known as SOX, dropping over 10% from recent highs. Despite a higher rate environment, our next guest is still bullish on the sector. Matt Bryson, Wedbush Enterprise Hardware Analyst, joins us now. Matt, thanks so much for taking the time here. Walk us through your thesis here, especially given some of the pullback that we've seen recently.
Yeah, so I think what we've seen over the last year or so is that the growth of generative AI has fueled the chip stocks, and the expectation that AI is going to shift kind of everything and the way that technology works. And I think that at the end of the day, that thesis will prove out. I think the question is really timing. But the investments that we've seen that have lifted NVIDIA, that have lifted AMD, that have lifted the chip sector in general, the large cloud service providers building out data centers, I don't think anything has changed there in the near term. So when I speak to OEMs who are making AI servers, when I speak to cloud service providers, there is still significant investment going on in that space. That investment is slated to continue certainly into 2025. And I think as long as there is this substantial investment, that we will see chip names report strong numbers and guide for strong growth.
That was Wedbush analyst Matt Bryson talking about the recent pullback in the semiconductor sector, which in turn caused semiconductor stocks to take a hit, and how he expects companies in the sector to recover soon. One such company is AMD. AMD stock is down 15% over the past month, but according to analysts, everything could change once the company reports earnings. When it comes to AMD's upcoming Q1 earnings report on April 30th, TD Cowen analyst Matt Ramsey has a reassuring message for investors. In fact, he believes that AMD will deliver an easily good enough earnings report, despite some concerns about the chipmaker meeting expectations. Ramsey is confident that AMD will post results solid enough to maintain investor confidence, and he even set a bullish price target of $200 on the stock, which is approximately a 31.5% upside from where the stock is trading as of the time of this video. So why is he so bullish on AMD? Let's find out in today's video. But before we do that, if you want to keep up with AMD's latest updates and keep up with the stock market's latest news, you can follow our Twitter account. We post multiple times daily about the biggest changes and catalysts in the market, so click the follow button if you don't want to miss the newest market updates. Now, back to today's video.
Matt, when it comes to the fact that we are in this macroeconomic environment right now, likelihood that rates will be higher for longer here, at least when you take a look at the expectations, especially following some of the commentary that we got from Fed officials this week, what does that signal more broadly for the AI trade? Meaning, is there reason to be a bit more cautious in this higher for longer rate environment, at least in the near term?
Yeah, so I mean, I think certainly from a market perspective, high interest rates weigh on the market, right? Eventually, they weigh on consumer spending. Certainly, for a lot of the chip names, they're high multiple stocks. So when you think about where there can be more of a reaction or a negative reaction to high interest rates, certainly it has some impact on those names. But in terms of, again, AI changing the fundamental landscape for tech, I don't think that high interest rates or low interest rates will change that, right? So when you think about Microsoft, Amazon, all of those large data center operators looking at AI potentially changing the landscape forever and wanting to make a bet on AI to make sure that they don't miss that change, I don't think whether interest rates are low or high are going to really affect their investment. I think they're going to go ahead and invest because no one wants to be the guy that missed the next technology wave.
According to Ramsey, AMD's newly launched MI300X AI chip is poised to be a massive revenue driver for the company. In fact, he believes that the chip will see the fastest ramp-up in sales of any AMD product in history. Additionally, Ramsey said that the MI300X is generally on track for rollout to major customers like Microsoft, Oracle, and Meta. In fact, the early customer response to the AI chip has been very positive, with Microsoft already using it to more efficiently serve its Azure cloud service and power OpenAI's GPT-4 large language model. He also thinks that AMD's $3.5 billion guidance for MI300X revenue this year is too conservative, saying that it could easily be exceeded, with $4 billion to $4.5 billion or more in mind. Looking ahead, Ramsey sees MI300X sales accelerating rapidly to $8 billion or $9 billion by 2025 as demand takes off, and as more and more customers start lining up, sales could surge to $15 billion in 2026 and $20 billion in 2027. Keep in mind that this is just one AMD product line, so when we combine these expectations with revenues from AMD's other segments like data centers, PCs, and gaming chips, it becomes obvious that AMD's business has the potential to skyrocket to new heights. And Ramsey isn't at all worried about AMD, suggesting that investors seem to be following the crowd when it comes to AMD and criticizing the herd mentality of near-term sentiment. He even wrote that sentiment, up or down, has changed a lot more than fundamentals for AMD this quarter. In other words, the stock's near-term volatility doesn't actually matter to him, and he also thinks that bearish expectations on the company's new AI chip are overblown because its ability to serve as a strong alternative to NVIDIA's H100 didn't change with the stock's fluctuations. Ramsey believes that the MI300X chip will exceed all expectations and cement AMD's leadership in the critical AI compute market for years to come. Not only that, but his bullish forecasts show that shareholders can look forward to substantial gains as this AI chip disrupts the industry. And it's not just Ramsey and TD Cowen who are extremely bullish on AMD because of its AI prospects. In fact, another institutional giant is betting big on AMD stock, and we're going to tell you who right now. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Investocracy.
HSBC sees an attractive risk-reward at current share levels, says market expectations for the company's MI300 2024 and 2025 revenue have been reset. So the street is looking for, or AMD's own guidance is $3.5 billion in sales for the MI300. HSBC's view is that the company could boost its forecast to above $5 billion. Also says AMD's next generation AI GPU is a more direct competitor to NVIDIA's GB200 in 2025. Thinks AMD has enough supply capacity and demand to surpass management's AI revenue guidance. He actually says that HSBC's base case is that AMD can take 10% of the market for AI GPUs in 2025. He says that would imply AMD's AI revenue for the next year can reach $12.3 billion. That's quite a bit higher than consensus, around $9 billion. But then his bull case is that AMD captures at least 15% of the market, and that could mean $18.5 billion of revenue from AI GPUs. So definitely bullish around the AI play there. Also lifted his earnings estimates for the full year of 2024 and 2025. Seems to be giving shares a boost. As you said, off-session highs was up as much as a little bit over 2% just a few minutes ago. Now it's only up about 1.2%, but in the green nonetheless, and chipping away at some of those monthly losses. But yes, far cry from NVIDIA. Shares only up about 10% year to date. Taking a look at NVIDIA, 75% year to date gains. So far cry from that.
During the semiconductor sector pullback, Mizuho Bank analyst Jordan Klein said that AMD stock is currently in absolute freefall, adding that few investors are willing to step up and buy on fears of catching a falling knife ahead of earnings. So, why does he think so? Klein is concerned that the company would give mixed commentary on its MI300X chip or fail to raise its outlook for its revenue, agreeing with Ramsey on the fact that it should be more than $3.5 billion. Despite this, Klein believes that AMD's upcoming earnings could turn things around, not just for AMD, but for the entire beaten-down semiconductor sector in the second quarter. When it comes to AMD, Klein thinks that whatever CEO Lisa Su and her team say about the outlook for the company's AI chips in the earnings call is beyond critical to support the stock and bring any potential buyers back. As for the semiconductor market, Klein added that AMD has the potential to drive sector sentiment significantly, for better or for worse. This is because semiconductor stocks could react to AMD results and progress, and if AMD's results are great and management reassures investors of the high demand for AI chips, the sector might bounce back. On the other hand, Klein thinks that if AMD disappoints, the sector might go down very quickly. Despite this, he said he's still an AMD bull and is a huge fan of their amazing work progress. If you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
Anyway, so NVIDIA was founded in 1993 with the basic goal of running graphics processors, right? So the processors that would power PC video games. They eventually started working with the likes of Microsoft and Sony. They credit themselves with creating the first graphics processing unit. And so they really were basically meant for gaming. And I think the idea that they are in AI now has to do with two major milestones. There was one in 2006 when they released their CUDA software. It's basically a software that allows developers to take a GPU and let it run general processing. So you would have a CPU, your central processing unit, what we usually call the brains of the computer, doing the general processing normally. A GPU, though, allows for what's called parallel processing. So rather than in a CPU, you have a certain number of lanes that are doing tasks. On a GPU, you can have far more lanes running the same data at the same time or data at the same time so that you're able to complete tasks much faster. So that goes into this whole AI thing.
So it's not just NVIDIA alone out there, we got to remember. Who are some of their biggest competitors?
Yeah, I mean, some of the big competitors are really the names that you already know and love, or maybe don't love, I don't know. Intel and AMD. AMD is probably its biggest competitor, and has been for years. They used to have they have a graphics card arm as well as a CPU arm. So they're basically fighting NVIDIA and Intel at the exact same time in different spaces. But the idea is that they have a new chip called the MI series, the MI300 series. And so they say that can compete with NVIDIA's chips.
While analysts believe that the MI300X will be an absolute game changer for AMD, it still faces some competition, especially from NVIDIA. But AMD isn't going down without a fight, and is especially targeting NVIDIA's CUDA platform. In fact, AMD is investing heavily in developing a drop-in CUDA replacement, which will allow seamless execution of CUDA-enabled software on AMD hardware. This open-source approach aims to break down barriers and allow AMD and NVIDIA GPUs to operate together in the same systems. On top of this, AMD has also partnered with companies like Google and Intel to create competitive hardware solutions, which will definitely help it take some market share from its main competitor, NVIDIA.
All right, well, stocks have really been off to a strong start of the year overall. The AI excitement really fueling that momentum to the upside. It's pushed the major averages to those all-time highs. Now, for investors looking to buy into this craze, there's more ways to play AI than maybe those obvious names when you're thinking NVIDIA and Microsoft. Morgan Stanley out with a recent note looking at companies that are actually powering AI, calling out a few of those hidden AI gems. Joining us now, we want to bring in Stephen Bird, Morgan Stanley equity analyst, to discuss. Stephen, it's great to have you here on Yahoo Finance. So talk to us just about your thesis here, because I think a lot of investors, when they're thinking about joining in on AI, they want to get a piece of this massive rally. They're thinking of those obvious names. You're, though, looking at some of those companies that's powering AI. What's the real opportunity here for investors and why?
Yeah, thank you for having me. The opportunity really here is around the infrastructure. It's very understandable. The first port of call is NVIDIA. We understand that and support that. But the infrastructure required, everything from power generation, power electronics, data centers themselves, that growth rate is set to accelerate. Many of those stocks have not participated in the rally that the first derivative AI plays really have, and that's essentially the call.
So talk to us then about your data center economics model in particular. You talk about how the cost of compute is falling. What is driving that, and what does that indicate to you about certain trends that investors should be keeping up to date with?
Yeah, I have to say, I was very surprised at the results of our assessment of data center economics. We see about a 50% drop in essentially the cost of compute, cost of computation in these data centers. That's really all NVIDIA. It's these new chips that are just much more efficient, and that's flowing through the entire ecosystem. As those costs drop, we think demand for a variety of Gen AI applications will rise, and that's essentially the thesis of our view of Gen AI adoption across many industries. That's just going to spur demand higher, and that's going to create even more demand for the infrastructure, for the nuts and bolts, all the power that's going to be required for all these data centers.
And Stephen, put this opportunity even in more perspective for our viewers. How early are we in this adoption cycle when it comes to AI? And then what does that tell us just about some of the future gains and the future growth that we could see from some of these companies like Bloom Energy that we have up on the screen?
That's such an important question. We think we're very early days. And I say that because we look at the pace of NVIDIA chip evolution, evolution of chips from others as well. We look at the future compute that's going to be needed for Gen AI more broadly. We see very rapid growth. Gen AI growth in terms of electricity growth is going to be about 100% a year for many years to come. And what's interesting to me is as the cost of compute drops, new use cases show up. So the demand for compute is only going to go up and up. We're extremely early days in this dynamic. And now investors are just really starting to look across what I think of as the value chain to providing the power to these data centers. So we're very early days in that regard.
With all of this in mind, should investors buy AMD stock ahead of earnings? There's a lot to be excited about when it comes to AMD. With its upcoming products, the long-term growth story appears strong, and since the stock is currently trading at around $150, a downside of around 40% from this year's peak of $211, there's a clear buying opportunity for investors who believe in AMD's future prospects. There's a strong need for more AI chips, as the global generative AI market is expected to be worth around $255 billion by 2033. So, companies will definitely continue needing AI chips in the future, especially generative AI chips. Even in the short term, consulting firm Deloitte expects that the market for generative AI chips will be over $50 billion by the end of 2024, and this is a huge change in a very short time, considering that the market size was close to zero in 2022. Deloitte also expects that generative AI chips will make up 2/3 of all AI chip sales in 2024, and that AI chips sales will account for 11% of the $576 billion global chip market. This is a massive and growing market, so even if NVIDIA dominates the majority of it, there's still an opportunity for other players like AMD, and the company's expertise in AI chips makes them more competitive as AI becomes pervasive. AMD's AI investments will continue to solidify its position in the market and allow it to generate new revenue opportunities, design more advanced chips, and build partnerships and collaborate on projects for heterogeneous computing solutions for AI. And aside from the MI300X, AMD has more launches planned for this year, including the Ryzen Pro 8000 series processors and the new Ryzen 9000 Zen 5 processors. This is one of the reasons why Wall Street analysts continue to be bullish on AMD, as 29 out of 48 analysts covering the stock have a strong buy rating on the stock. Meanwhile, the average price target these analysts set is $197, which is around a 31% upside from where the stock is currently trading. Right now, there are still lots of questions to be answered in the company's upcoming earnings call, especially when it comes to the expectations for AMD's AI chips. But one thing's for sure, AMD stock could see a boost as the company continues to innovate. So, what do you think? What are your expectations for AMD? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. If you would like to know more latest updates about AMD and what they have been up to, then go ahead and click on the next video on your screen.